Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. Let me take you straight into a night I still hear in my sleep. The whir of the ceiling fan, the ice shifting in her glass, and her words slicing the quiet. You don't mean anything to me. There was an extra toothbrush missing. That's how it started. Not with shouting, not with tears, but with an empty slot in the bathroom cup. I didn't panic. Not yet. Maybe she'd packed it for the gym. Or tossed it. Or maybe I was just overthinking everything, like always. But that night, when I got home from work, she was already dressed. Not casually either. She wore a dark green dress I didn't recognize, heels I hadn't seen in a year, and perfume that made the entire hallway feel like someone else's apartment. She didn't say where she was going, just glanced at the clock and said, "Don't wait up." I still remember the exact way she said it, like she was doing me a favor. I sat on the couch for 2 hours, staring at the paused TV. Eventually, I opened a bag of chips, ate maybe 4, and tossed them away because my stomach was tied in knots. I walked past our bedroom, past the unmade bed, and into the bathroom again. That's when I noticed her ring wasn't on the sink anymore either. The toothbrush, the perfume, the missing ring. Still, I told myself maybe she needed space. Maybe she was going through something. We've been married for 11 years. There had to be an explanation, right? Wrong. The next morning, she was back before sunrise. Hair messy, no shoes, a pink scratch on her collarbone. She didn't even bother sneaking in. Just dropped her keys on the counter, poured herself a drink, and looked at me sitting in the kitchen like I was a tenant who overstayed the lease. And that's when she said it. No warning, no hesitation. "You don't mean anything to me." She said it while stirring ice in her glass. And all I could do was blink. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted to scream, to cry, to fall apart like in the movies. But I didn't. I just stood up, walked into the bedroom, and packed my bag. One pair of jeans, a hoodie, my birth certificate. I left my ring on the pillow and didn't bother closing the door behind me. By the time she walked in and realized I was gone, I was already 5 towns away. But the real story? It doesn't end with me walking out. It starts with what she did next. And it's a whole lot worse than just a missing toothbrush. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying or heartbroken, though maybe I should have been, but because my brain wouldn't stop replaying her face, her tone, her exact posture when she said those words. "You don't mean anything to me." Over and over. Like my mind wanted to carve it into my bones, so I'd never forget how small I felt. I drove with no direction, just letting the road pull me forward while the sky turned a dim, moody gray. I didn't even have music on. Silence was louder than anything I could have played. By 7 a.m., I ended up at this roadside diner 3 towns over. I sat in a cracked red booth and ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I stared at the steam rising from the mug like it might offer answers. It didn't. I felt like a ghost in my own life. The thing is, I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I had nothing left to say. What do you say to someone who's already erased you? And yet, deep down, I knew I wasn't done. Not emotionally. Not mentally. I needed to know the full truth. I didn't want revenge. I'm not built for drama, but I needed clarity. Closure. Something. So I did something pathetic. I know it's pathetic, but I logged into the old tablet we shared. She hadn't used it in months, maybe even forgotten it existed. But it was still synced with her cloud. Within minutes, I found them. Pictures. Videos. Screenshots. Not hidden in any special folder. Just there, under her camera roll. Dozens of them. Hotel rooms. Fancy bars. Him. He wasn't some stranger either. His name was Bryson, and he used to be my coworker 5 years ago. He had that kind of smile people instantly trusted. The kind of guy who gives you a firm handshake and compliments your watch like he's known you forever. Apparently, my wife really liked that smile too. There was one video that broke me more than anything else. It wasn't explicit, not in the way you'd expect. It was her sitting across from him in a restaurant, laughing, really laughing, like she hadn't done with me in years. And then she said it, almost like a joke. "He still thinks I'm just going through a phase. I could disappear, and he'd still be standing there waiting." She meant me. I shut the tablet, gently, like it was made of glass. My hands were trembling, not with rage, but something worse, humiliation. That's when I realized I hadn't lost her that night in the kitchen. I'd lost her long ago. I was just too blind, too hopeful, too weak to see it. I booked a motel room under a fake name. Sat on the edge of the bed with the lights off. My phone buzzed twice, her name on the screen, but I didn't answer. I didn't even read the messages. She noticed I was gone. Good. But what she didn't know yet was that I wasn't coming back. And what I hadn't figured out yet was, neither was the version of me she left behind. Whatever happens next, whatever I decide to do, starts with that broken man in a dark motel room, holding onto the last thread of his dignity. Tomorrow, I was going to do something she never expected. I was going to speak. And this time, everyone would hear it. I hadn't planned to go back. That was the whole point of leaving. But the anger didn't settle like I thought it would. It just shifted. It stopped being sadness and turned into this quiet, gnawing frustration. Not just at her, but at myself. I'd let her lie to me for who knows how long. And worst of all, I let her believe I'd never do anything about it. That I'd always be the quiet one. The doormat. The man who waited while she laughed with someone else. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was an email. See, while she remembered to take her phone, her wallet, her favorite perfume, and whatever else she needed to play house with Bryson, she forgot one tiny detail. We were still linked on a few old accounts, like our shared OpenTable profile. I got a confirmation email the next morning for a dinner reservation under her name. Fancy seafood place, downtown. Same place we went to on our 10th anniversary. The booking? 4/2. Friday at 7:30 p.m. I stared at the screen like it had teeth. That was tomorrow. At first, I deleted it. Then I opened the trash folder and restored it. My heart was racing. I knew it was them, Lorna and Bryson. He was in town. She thought I was gone. And they were treating themselves to oysters and champagne at a restaurant I used to save up 3 paychecks just to surprise her at. And that's when the idea hit me. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even confrontation. I didn't want to scream or throw drinks. I just wanted her to see me. To see that I wasn't some half-broken man sitting in a motel room with nothing left but dry eyes and regrets. I wanted to make sure the last image of me she carried in her head was one she couldn't erase. So, I made my own reservation. Different name. Same time. One table over. I pulled out the only dress shirt I'd packed, ironed it in the motel bathroom with steam from the shower, and called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in months, Monica. We went to college together. She was the first person who ever told me I deserved more than I settled for. I didn't tell her everything, just that I needed a favor and that it would probably be awkward. She agreed instantly. Friday came. Monica picked me up in her bright red Jeep and made a joke about how I looked like I was about to give a TED Talk on heartbreak. I smiled, genuinely, for the first time in days. Maybe weeks. We walked into the restaurant right on time. And there she was, Lorna, in a silver dress I'd never seen before, laughing, arm looped around Bryson's. They were already halfway through a bottle of wine. She didn't see me at first, but the second the host guided us to the table directly next to theirs, she turned and froze. Our eyes met. I didn't smirk. I didn't look away. I just nodded, politely, then sat down with Monica like it was the most normal thing in the world. She blinked 3 times, her mouth parted, then quickly turned back to her date like she hadn't just seen a ghost. Bryson leaned in and asked something. She shook her head too quickly. I watched her hands start to fidget. Her laugh didn't come as easily anymore. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the broken man she left standing in the kitchen. I felt like someone she'd regret losing. But the night wasn't over yet. Because just when I thought I had taken control of the moment, Monica leaned over and whispered something that made my heart drop into my stomach. And that changed everything. Monica leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear, and said, "She was in my building last week." I didn't think much of it until now. I felt my spine straighten. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my eyes on Lorna, who was now nervously twirling her hair while pretending to listen to whatever Bryson was saying. Monica sat back, lowering her voice. "Thursday. I saw her coming out of apartment 3C. That's Nathan's place." My stomach clenched. Nathan? As in her cousin Nathan? No, that didn't make sense. Unless it wasn't him living there anymore. Unless. She was laughing, Monica added. Like, really laughing. She had a duffel bag. I assumed maybe she was helping someone move, but now I think. I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Something about that moment, the restaurant lights, the tightness in Lorna's shoulders, Monica's words, everything snapped into sharp focus. This wasn't a brief affair. This wasn't just Bryson. This was deeper, longer, messier. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestration. A well-rehearsed performance designed to slowly phase me out without confrontation. And I had played my part perfectly. Quiet, loyal, gullible. I looked at Lorna again. She was staring into her wine like it held answers. Her eyes darted toward me and then quickly away. Bryson didn't seem to notice. He was scrolling on his phone, showing her something. Probably another vacation spot or whatever dreams they were mapping out together now that I was conveniently out of the picture. I stood up. Monica grabbed my wrist. Are you sure you want to? Yes, I said. Not to cause a scene. Not to explode. I just needed to ask one question. One honest, final question. I walked over to their table like I belonged there. Lorna froze mid-sip. Bryson raised his eyebrows. Corwin, he asked, like I was an old college roommate who'd walked into the wrong party. Sorry to interrupt, I said, my voice steady. I turned to Lorna. That toothbrush you took, was it his place or someone else's? The blood drained from her face. Bryson looked between us, confused. What's he talking about? She didn't answer. She just stared at me. So I leaned in closer and whispered. I saw everything. The photos. The texts. The reservations. You forgot to log out. She opened her mouth. Closed it again. Her hands trembled just slightly. And then she looked at Bryson and said the quietest, I'm sorry, I've ever heard. But it wasn't for me. It was for him. Because suddenly he wasn't so smug. His hand dropped from hers. Wait, he muttered. You told me you were separated. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I walked back to Monica, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. The entire restaurant felt like it had gone still. I didn't look back. Not because I wanted to appear strong, but because I knew that if I did, if I saw her falling apart even a little, I might crumble too. Outside, the air hit cold against my face. Monica caught up, her heels clicking on the pavement. That was bold, she said. That was overdue, I replied. But inside, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel healed. I felt hollow. Because even though I'd said what I needed to say, the truth was clear now. Lorna had been gone for a long time. Long before Bryson. Long before Nathan's building. And I had been standing still, waiting for someone who'd already walked away. But the next day, the fallout began. And that's when things really spiraled. The next morning started with silence. No alarm. No texts. Just the strange emptiness of a motel room that smelled like old coffee and cheap soap. I hadn't told Monica much after we left the restaurant. We drove in silence, and she didn't push. She dropped me off, gave me a quiet nod, and I promised I'd call her later. I didn't. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, feeling more like a spectator in my own life than a participant. Then, around 9:17 a.m., my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of notifications started pouring in all at once. Missed calls, messages, a few from numbers I didn't even recognize. But it was the preview text from my brother Aiden that made my pulse spike. Bro, check the friends chat. Lorna's losing it. I opened the group thread, one we'd had for years, with old friends, cousins, former coworkers. Mostly memes and birthday wishes. But this was a war zone. Lorna had apparently tried to control the narrative. She messaged the group something like, Corwin showed up at dinner last night and embarrassed me in public. I think he's going through something. She tried to paint me as unstable, lost, unhinged. And it might have worked if she hadn't overlooked one small detail. Screenshots. I had sent Aiden a copy of the photos and chat logs from her tablet 2 nights earlier, just in case I lost my nerve to confront her. He didn't hesitate. He posted everything. Not with malice, but with surgical precision. Image 1, her with Bryson at the beach in July. Image 2, the text thread where she wrote, he still thinks I'm his wife. Isn't that cute? Image 3, her Airbnb receipt from the same weekend she told me she was visiting her sick aunt. Silence in the group for 2 whole minutes. Then chaos. Half the people were stunned. A few asked if it was fake. Someone said, Lorna, please tell me this isn't real. She didn't respond. She left the group chat entirely 6 minutes later. And I just sat there, holding my phone, watching everything unfold in real time like I wasn't even the one it happened to. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt exposed. Like everyone was watching me bleed out and didn't know whether to clap or look away. But the strangest part? I got a message from Bryson. Private. Short. Did you know about Greg? I didn't even know who Greg was. That's when it hit me. There was still more. I didn't have the whole picture. I'd been so caught up with Bryson, so obsessed with catching her in that affair that I'd ignored what was lurking underneath. Another name. Another layer. I replied with a single word. No. He sent back 3 screenshots. None of them recent. They dated back over a year. It was another man entirely. A colleague from her marketing firm. Greg. Married. Kids. And judging by the texts, their affair had started long before Bryson ever entered the picture. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This wasn't infidelity. This was a pattern. A life I never knew she was living. And somehow, I'd just been orbiting around her real world, playing the role of the clueless husband. The messages ended with one final line from Bryson. She told me she was in love. Guess that's her thing. My fingers hovered over the screen for a long time. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? But it didn't matter anymore. Because just then, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. And on the other end, a man's voice said, "Is this Corwin? We need to talk. It's about Lorna." The voice on the phone was calm. Too calm. Measured, like someone who'd rehearsed exactly what to say. "My name's Ellis," he said. "I'm Greg's brother-in-law. I know this is unexpected, but you and I are in the same mess." My grip tightened around the phone. I hadn't said anything yet. I wasn't even sure this was real. But the guy kept talking. "I got your number through Bryson. I know, weird chain of events. But I think we both deserve to know what she's been doing. My sister found the text between Greg and your wife 2 days ago. She's been in pieces ever since. You're not the only one who got left in the dark." I could hear wind in the background. Maybe he was outside. Maybe pacing. He sounded frustrated, but not irrational. I finally spoke. "Why are you calling me?" "Because," Ellis said, "Lorna reached out to my sister this morning. Claimed you were unstable. Said you might try to hurt yourself. She's trying to spin the story like you've lost your mind, and she's just an innocent woman trapped in a toxic marriage." Sound familiar? I felt the floor shift beneath me. She was already rewriting history. I shouldn't have been surprised. But hearing it from a stranger made it feel colder. Calculated. I leaned against the wall of the motel room, staring at the peeling wallpaper. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," he replied. "Just maybe a conversation. A little solidarity. You're not alone in this, man." I agreed to meet him. Public place. Neutral ground. A diner just off the interstate. The same kind of place that served watery coffee and pancakes that tasted like cardboard, but it was quiet and anonymous. We sat across from each other, 2 men bound together by someone else's lies. Ellis was older than I expected. Mid-40s, strong jaw, tired eyes. He didn't look broken. He looked weathered. He handed me a folder, actual printed papers. "In case she tries anything legal," he said. Screenshots, dates, receipts. Lorna and Greg were booking hotel rooms under fake names for over a year. My sister hired a private investigator. I flipped through the folder in silence. I didn't ask why his sister hadn't confronted Lorna directly. I didn't ask why Ellis was the one delivering the intel. Some questions answer themselves: shame, fear, exhaustion. I was carrying all of them too. As I closed the folder, Ellis said something that stuck with me more than anything else that day. "These women, they don't just cheat. They build parallel lives. They gaslight, manipulate, and when the cracks show, they make us the villains." I nodded, slowly. He wasn't wrong. We sat there a while longer, neither of us touching our coffee. Then we went our separate ways, 2 strangers walking away from the same fire, carrying different pieces of the wreckage. Back at the motel, I opened my phone and checked my voicemail. 3 missed calls from Lorna. 1 voice message. I played it. Her voice was shaky, but not tearful. "Corwin, I know you're angry. I know you think I betrayed you. But there's so much you don't understand. I was scared. You weren't present anymore. We drifted. Please don't destroy what little dignity I have left. Just call me. Please." Dignity. The word made me laugh out loud. Not bitterly, just hollow. Dignity had left the room months ago. Maybe years. I didn't call her back. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. If she wanted to control the narrative, I'd beat her to it. The truth was mine to tell now. And the first person I sent it to? Greg's wife. I didn't sleep that night. Again. But this time, it wasn't grief or confusion keeping me awake. It was purpose. A strange, determined energy had taken over me. The kind that doesn't come from anger, but from finally realizing that silence is what let this whole thing rot in the first place. I had spent years trying not to upset her, not to ask too many questions, not to seem too insecure. And for what? To be erased? Not anymore. By morning, the document was 7 pages long. I had typed out everything. The timeline, the photos, the dinner confrontation, Ellis's call, even the exact words she whispered to Bryson in that wine-soaked restaurant booth. I didn't dramatize anything. I didn't have to. The truth was ugly enough on its own. I found Greg's wife's email buried in a forwarded message Ellis had sent me. Her name was Bethany. I wrote a short note at the top. "You don't know me, but I think we've both been living in the dark for too long. I thought you deserved to see the light." I attached the file and hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then I turned off my phone. That same day, I checked out of the motel. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just knew I couldn't keep hiding in that musty little room, pretending I was figuring things out. I needed movement. I needed distance. I needed air. I drove out toward the coast, found a cheap guest house near an old harbor town, and paid cash for 3 nights. No Wi-Fi, spotty signal, just gulls, fog, and the occasional slap of water against the docks. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. 2 days passed, then 3. I didn't check my phone. I journaled. I walked. I stared at the sea like it owed me answers. It didn't give any, but at least it didn't lie. When I finally turned my phone back on, the explosion hit. 32 missed calls. Over 100 unread messages. A few from Monica. Some from Aiden. One from my mom. "Call me when you're safe." But the one that froze me was from an unknown number. Bethany. Her message was simple. I read everything. "Thank you for your honesty. Greg confessed. He's staying with his parents." I filed. "I'm sorry you went through this too." No rage. No vengeance. Just the quiet collapse of another life torn apart by the same web of deceit. But then came the second text, from Lorna. "You had no right to involve them. This wasn't your story to share." I stared at her words for a long time, completely numb. No apology. No remorse. Just control. She still thought she could dictate the terms of this fallout, like she was the producer and I was just a bad extra who'd improvised the wrong line. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened my email. Dozens of new messages had poured in since the chat group bomb went off. Mutual friends. Extended family. Even one of her old co-workers who simply wrote, "I always suspected. I'm sorry you were right." But among the digital wreckage, one message stood out. "Bryson." Subject line. "You should know what she said after you left." I clicked. His message wasn't long. He said that after I walked out of the restaurant, Lorna sat frozen for a while. Then she told him, calmly, that I'd always been too soft to survive without her. That eventually, I'd come crawling back. That people like Corwin don't make it alone. He ended the message with a single sentence. "Don't prove her right." It was the first time someone had said exactly what I needed to hear. And that's when I made my final decision. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was closing the door, locking it, and throwing the key into the ocean. The sun was just beginning to rise when I walked out onto the wooden pier behind the guest house, the air thick with salt and silence. I hadn't slept again, but this time, I didn't feel worn out. I felt alive, like the pain had finally burned through everything weak and left something steadier underneath. It wasn't strength, not exactly. Just clarity. She said I wouldn't survive without her. She said I didn't matter. But every step I'd taken since walking away from that house, every hard truth, every ugly revelation, proved the opposite. I was still here, not only surviving, but finally seeing her for who she was, and seeing me for who I could become. I didn't need to send one last message. I didn't need to defend myself. Everyone who needed to know already knew. The truth had done its work. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't even hurt. I was free. Lorna once had the power to break me with a single sentence. Now, her silence didn't touch me. She could rewrite the story in her head as many times as she wanted. But in mine, I had already walked away. I moved back to the city a few weeks later. Not to the same neighborhood. Not even the same life. I started over. I rented a tiny apartment above a bookstore, got a job at a community co-op fixing up old computers, and began taking long walks without needing to check my phone. I even started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. And then, there was Monica. She didn't disappear after that dinner. She checked in. She dropped off coffee. She waited. She never pushed. And eventually we talked. Really talked. About fear and regret. and the strange way betrayal can wake you up to things you'd been avoiding your whole life. We're not together. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something real. Something honest. One step at a time. I don't look back anymore. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been made to feel small, erased, unwanted, know this. People like us do make it alone. And not just alone. Better. Stronger. Clearer. We survive. And then, we live. Thanks for following my story. If it hit home, leave a comment below. What's a moment in your life that changed everything? Maybe a sentence, an event, a decision? Let's talk about it. You're on Reddit Confessions, where the truth always finds a voice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.